You are listening to The Underground Subway with host David Alston, a podcast dedicated to giving you the strategies to live a free and better life. Here is David Alston.
Hi, I'm David Alston, host of The Underground Subway, and I want to thank you for joining this podcast. This podcast is dedicated to one thing. It is dedicated to doing whatever we need to do, and it is dedicated to giving you the strategies and the tools that are necessary to live a better and more successful life. No matter what difficulties or what struggles we've had in the past, this podcast is going to lay it on the table, and we're going to show you different ways and different strategies and ideas and concepts based on the experience that we've gained through our lives to make life better for you. I am so proud and so honored to be able to say that my grandmother was first cousins with Harriet Tubman, which makes me the third cousin of Harriet Tubman. And cousin Harriet led so many people to freedom with the Underground Railroad. Well, we're in 2022 and we don't have an Underground Railroad, but we have an Underground Subway, a modern method of offering you what you need to have in order to be free. Cousin Harriet said something so powerful. She said, I could have freed so many more slaves if only they knew that they were not free. How many of us are living a life in which we don't really realize that we are being restrained by certain things from our past? We're being restrained. What does liberty mean? It means to function, to live, to operate without restraints. How many of us can look in the mirror and say, so many things from my past failures, my past mistakes, my past traumatic experiences are causing me to live a life full of restraints? Well, my friends, this podcast, we're going to snatch the chains off and you're going to be free. Not just you. I don't want to be free. And my family, my children, my grandchildren are still in bondage. Pardon my grammar. It's going to be grammatically incorrect when I say it, but I got to say it. We's all going to be free when we listen to the Underground Subway. I'm so excited to bring a guest with me. I always give you very quality guests. It doesn't matter how many guests, but all of my guests are they're so qualified, they're experienced. And my guest for this particular version of the Underground Subway is none other than Hanna. No, I started to play a game and call her Hannah Montana. That was a little thing to my daughter who used to love Hannah Montana. Madonna Hanna. Madonna Hanna is our guest, and Madonna has joined us all the way. We're in North Carolina, and she's all the way in the great Pacific Northwest. And let me tell you a little bit about Madonna. At one time, she was the only African-American student in her elementary school class. And including herself, there were only 8 African-Americans in her graduating high school class. Despite her creativity and talent, Hannah faced bullying, racial prejudice, and isolation at school due to the color of her skin. Her retail education prepared her to be recruited into a prestigious retail management executive training program in one of the largest department stores in New England. She also worked at the corporate headquarters of a national women's apparel manufacturing corporation. She later embarked on a 32-year career teaching fashion marketing in Washington State. She developed numerous anti-bullying programs and was recognized for excellence in teaching at the state and national level. Life today, what is she doing today? As a retiree and a widow, she continues to win awards as a senior athlete in track and field. Presently, Madonna is writing a monthly column in a local paper chronicling her journey to the National Senior Games. She is also a motivational speaker committed to preventing bullying in schools and promoting an active second act. As also, she is a member of Toastmasters International, where she participates in international speech contests. Let me tell you, Madonna's goal is to utilize her skills, talents, and experiences to assist others with achieving their goals and dreams while building their self-esteem. That is so powerful and so much. But welcome to the Underground Subway, Madonna, Hanna. Welcome, my friend, and thank you for joining us.
Wow, David, I'm going like, whew, that's an awful lot. And David, I have not slowed down. Where do you want me to start? Because there's a lot of stuff hopping and popping with
Well,
me
you
right
you
now.
tell us. You start and pop and hop, and we'll jump right on and get this thing rolling. The floor is yours. Keep in mind, our theme and what we do is we want people to live a better life, no matter how good it is. Live a better life. I will say this. Maybe you can piggyback off of this. I was speaking to someone today about life growing up and some of the struggles that I had growing up. And my coworker did not believe. She thought I was just joking. She said, you could have been a comedian because no one had it that rough. People just don't realize how bad things really are, do they?
Oh, no, they don't. It's especially when they're looking from their own perspective and their own experiences.
Mm-hmm. Right.
Let me share with your listeners that I am the light at the end of a dark tunnel. I could have been very bitter, but I strove for better. One of the, what I'm going to start with is, you mentioned that I was writing an article about my journey as a late amateur competitive sprinter. Coming up at the end of July, I will have an article published in an AARP publication called The Ethel, and it is an online publication for women of a certain age. And it is about me becoming a track star after the age of 60.
Wow.
I did not participate in any sports at all growing up or in high school. At the age of 57, I think it was just God who whispered to me, run 100 meters.
Mm-hmm.
What? David, it was an overwhelming feeling and I couldn't shake it. My husband, my late husband, had track and field experience. And I said, well, I want to run 100 meters. He said, okay, just do what I do. And I did. I competed in the 2011 Washington State Senior Games, won the 50 and won the 100, competing against people who had far more experience than me. But sometimes, David, if God means for you to do something, he is going to make a way.
That's right.
Absolutely, positively. Fast forward, in late 2018, my husband passed away after 3 bouts of cancer. And one of the things he said to me was that he wanted me to continue to run competitively. He said, build up your thighs and wear red, white, and blue at your next national game event. And that was in 2019, that next event. And let me tell you how else life can bring a surprise into your life. When I retired from teaching, 32 years of teaching, which you mentioned, I was teaching millennials. Who's my track coach now? A millennial.
Wow.
He is an elite athlete. He's got all the credentials, NCAA champion and Pac-12 and All-American and all this business. And we are matched up now. Initially, it was a favor for someone. Another athlete reached out and said, listen, like, like you to do a favor for me. There's a woman. She's an older woman. Now he's used to in high school. He's used to coaching school, and so he said, "Okay, all right." You know how that is for somebody who I believe he was like 24 at the time. Like, sure, you want me to coach this really old woman? Yes. You know, she has a big event coming up, and it's worked out. He is still my coach. There is that generational gap between us, but I want your listeners to know that absolutely anything is possible. We get along. We initially both had the same doubts as far as, well, I'm older. Is he going to listen to me? And he was thinking, I'm younger. Is she going to listen to me? Well, obviously, I've listened, and I competed a couple of weeks ago at the 2022 National Senior Games in Florida, in Fort Lauderdale, Florida. And for the first time, I made it into the top 10 nationally in my age group. And it's because of his expertise and my dedication and hard work. So anything is possible. And like I said, I'm the light at the end of the tunnel. I do want to go back to what you said about me being the only Black kid in my elementary school class. That was extremely difficult. There were 30 kids in the class, and thankfully only 4 of them, and I do remember their first and last names, and anybody who's ever been bullied, you remember the names. You remember
definitely.
the names of the people who bully you. That was difficult, as I said, and moving into junior high school, there was an incident in my gym class where after my gym class, I went to my locker. The locker door was open. My wallet was gone. And 2 white girls delivered my wallet to me. They threw it at me, shoved me into my locker, and called me the N-word several times. I weighed all of 99 pounds, just this little skin and bones Black girl. I went to my gym teacher, who was white, and I said, Mrs. So-and-so, Helen and Lauren took my wallet and pushed me into the locker and called me names. Now here I am, David. I'm crying,
right,
shaking. I'm scratched up and I'm bleeding. And she said to me, now, Madonna, those are nice girls and they wouldn't do that.
Wow.
Yes. Wow. I was between a rock and a hard place now, wasn't I?
Yes, definitely.
I went back to my locker crying, and there were the girls. They weren't calling me the N-word this time, but they were calling me a tattletale. I look back on my elementary school experience, my experience in junior high school, and some experiences in high school. I look back now and I am grateful for those experiences. But I had to get to the point to be better and not bitter.
Right.
Having gone through all the excruciating stuff that I went through gave me a thick skin, because I went into an industry, the fashion industry, that's cutthroat, that is challenging. I love the industry, I do, but it's a very competitive industry, and you do need a thick skin. And the thick skin that I developed from being bullied helped me. An absolutely incredible incident that happened while I was an executive at this major department store in downtown Boston which can be very racist.
Oh yeah, I've heard.
Yes, 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 yes. I was in charge of a young juniors department that generated the fourth largest volume in the New England area, which means that the buyer carried a lot of weight. She was an absolutely horrible person, just a horrible, horrible bully. And when I was transferred into her department, she did not like she did not like me because of the color of my skin. How did I know that? One day, as she was coming to visit her department, a couple of customers, white customers, were looking at a blouse. They took the blouse off the hanger, put it back on, and it fell to the floor. Now, I saw the buyer coming across the floor. We were looking at each other. As the manager, I went over to pick the blouse up off the floor, and David, she started yelling at me. Why is my $23 Shipley blouse on the floor? Then every pent up ugly thing that she felt about me came out, David. She called me the E-word on the floor. Now we're on the fourth floor of a major department store, fourth floor. She called me the N-word. She put the witch word in there too. I don't know why they hired you, and just, oh my gosh, all that ugliness spilled out. I did not say a thing. I was very controlled, had a lot of self-discipline. I walked off the floor. I walked across the floor to my supervisor's office. She was the head of the children's division. And as I was walking off the floor, the buyer was screaming at me, "You're leaving my floor unsupervised. She's leaving my floor." And then off she went. David, she rode the escalator down 4 floors, calling me the N-word and the black witch word, all the way out of the store, across the street to the buying offices, where her office was on the 8th floor. So everybody got to hear part of her show, right? Oh my gosh. My boss was on the phone, and I just walked into her office and said, either transfer me out of that department or today is my last day. Today is my last day working. Mm-hmm. Yeah, she had to hang up the phone. And I will tell you something. The top executives got on it right away, and everything was resolved in about, I'm going to say, in about 2 hours. You know, the place was a buzz because this was the big gossip of the day. My boss called me into her office and said, "Listen, Madonna, we got everything resolved here. The buyer cannot come into your department without calling you first and asking your permission." Well, I had a big smile on my face, David.
I'm sure.
Yes, but my boss said, "Madonna, take that smile off your face because that woman is going to be gunning for you."
Yes.
So you have absolutely everything in order. You hear me? And I went, I sobered up. Yes. David, what eventually happened was the buyer and I eventually got along. One day she came over to the department and she said, "Everything looks wonderful, Madonna. I appreciate what you're doing." And I even told the big bosses that. "Did they tell you that?" And I said, "No, they didn't." And she said, "Oh, fine. Now, if I had called you the N-word, yes, okay. But when I give you a compliment, oh, fine. Nobody says anything to you about it." And we both laughed, David. We both. When I eventually left that department store to work for the national manufacturer, women's apparel manufacturer, they threw me a big party, and the buyer took me aside and she said, Madonna, you're not leaving because of something I did, are you? And I went, oh my goodness. And I said, no, no, no. And she goes, oh, okay. But David, look at how it's almost like me having that prior experience of being bullied just
Right.
toughened me so that when this horrible, ugly, explosive situation happened on the selling floor, I was able to maintain my dignity, my poise, my professionalism, because I was not going to say anything to this woman who was overwrought and just spewing all this ugliness.
Mm-hmm.
There is a light at the end of the tunnel, and this had a good ending to it, but I had to stand up. It's like what you said about being free and knowing who you are and snatching those chains off,
Right.
because that was a defining moment for me. I didn't cry. Did I want to cry? You bet I did, because that was an assault coming at me. But I was not going to give her the satisfaction of crying in front of her, because I did my crying as a child. And when you're bullied and you cry, that's what the bully wants.
Well, do you think that it is more because I think a lot of times, in my opinion, I think when we hear the term bullying, we automatically assume that it only happens to children in classrooms. I don't think we fully realize just how much bullying occurs to adults. Which one is
yes.
which one is more difficult based on your experience?
David, I'm going to say it was more difficult as a child, but I had to go through that experience as a child so I could handle myself as an adult.
Right.
You follow with that? If I hadn't spent so many days going home crying and talking to God, begging God to change my skin color, I would say, God, why did you make my skin this color? Why did you do this to me? I didn't realize that at the time that God had other plans for me, and that he was going to help me through this, which he did, because when I eventually became an educator in vocational education, I knew that as an educator, there would be no bullying in my classroom. And there was no way I was going to pattern the behavior of that gym teacher. No way. I let my students know up front the first day, bullying is not going to fly in this class, because I was bullied and I know how insidious it can be. And I know that when somebody says something and they say, oh, I was just joking, I'd say, no, you weren't joking. No, that's not going to fly in. Eventually, I did create quite a few anti-bullying projects that my fashion students were involved in. I wrote a children's book, an illustrated children's self-esteem book called Mommy, Why Are My Eyes So Big? And I eventually wrote a play based on my book and a fashion show that involve students with disabilities, because they're picked on too. And
Right.
it just,
Definitely. Yes. That's
yeah,
that's a field that I was in for 20 years. So I definitely, I was an educator for 20 years with children with disabilities. So I definitely can understand that.
yes. And I developed a fashion show concept called Flights of Fancy. And my students, the regular ed students, were to teach the special needs students how to model and also do their hair and makeup and everything for, this big production of a fashion show. It was such a wonderful experience. At the end of each project, I would ask my students to just kind of debrief and tell me about something that they will never ever forget.
Mm-hmm.
One of the age boys who was on the football team, he said, after the fashion show, my model wanted me to meet his parents. So I went out, and he said both parents were crying, and they both hugged him and said, thank you so much for helping my child, because they'd always been bullied, and you made my child look just so wonderful on stage. And he said that no adult had ever thanked him like that. And isn't that incredible,
It
David?
is.
Just to
It
have this
is.
Bigfoot,
Mm-hmm.
just embraced by these parents who have had to live through their special needs child just always not being in things, not being, selected for sports, not being in a play, not, always being left out. And here they are, the shining moment. And David, because you said that you taught special needs kids, I would like to read a quick page from my picture book. May I?
Sure.
Okay. So the book is called Mommy, Why Are My Eyes So Big? And the ultimate mommy is Mother Nature. Mommy, why do I have Down syndrome? Dear child, the best blessings have truly been saved for you. Your courage, patience, and loving nature are your greatest strength. And I did work with a young man who was blind. Mommy, why am I blind? My precious darling, you are blessed with the most honest gift of sight. You will never be able to judge a person by the color of their skin, height, weight, or physical imperfections. You have the ability to see into the heart, and that's the very best way to accept others.
Wow.
You like that?
I like that. Give us real quickly, we're running out of time. There's an old adage that says time flies when you're having fun. So we have a few minutes left, but in the few minutes we do have left, give us a little a strategy that someone can implement right away in the classroom or wherever to combat bullying.
Two things. First of all, parents, ask your teachers what their bullying policy is in classroom. Yes, the district has their policies, but not all district policies are followed in the classroom. You ask the teacher up front during parent-teacher night or whatever, if my child is bullied, what are you going to do about it? How do you handle it? And
If
then
I
how do
may,
you?
if I may interrupt, and I know we're running
Yes.
out of time, but I think I really must interrupt with this. What about the case when the teacher does not, although they may have a policy, that they are quote unquote blind to the bullying?
Yes. And and David, yes, that happens. That's why I'm asking the parent to ask the teachers point blank, what are you going to do? And then they'll find out by the look on the
Right.
teacher's face.
Yes.
And then what parents can also do is talk to their children, ask them what is going on in the classroom. What would you do if you were bullied? Are there any children in your class who are bullied? And also, parents absolutely need to know who their children's friends are and what their child's pecking order is amongst their friends. That's very important. And as far as educators, I'm sorry, David, I've got to say, grow a backbone and handle the bullying in your classroom. Put your foot down.
Right. You're right.
Out.
What about the other side of the coin? Stretching all this time out, we're going to squeeze everything into this podcast that we can. What about the other side of the coin when children there are some who have a tendency to use bullying as an excuse? I mean, do we need to weed through the,
Yes. And if the teacher is on point and knows their student, because I came out of corporate America and I had to know all of my people in order to move them toward a goal, I would have the students participate in leadership and teamwork activities early on. And I found out little things about their personalities so that I could find out who the victims were, who the self-appointed victims were. And I would have a little conversation with them and with their counselors. I wouldn't get the parents in yet because I wanted to work with the student and their counselors first. So that's how I handled that. And I'm glad that you brought that up, because there are kids who will pull that victim card and everybody's picking on them, but
right.
it's like, oh, please.
Right.
You've been there, done that, David.
Yes,
you know how it goes.
I know how it goes. Well, Madonna, I hate to have to end this, but we're running out of time, and this has been so very informative to me. Anytime you talk education and children, you're right down my alley, because I have a very strong passion for our children and being an advocate, especially for those with disabilities. I can tell you plenty of stories, about children, about education, from working with children with behavior problems to coaching the football team. I can tell you all about our next generation, and it just does my heart so good to be able to talk to someone with like passion who says, listen, it's no need of us being free, as I said when we started, and our children still being in bondage. We've got to get them out. Well, thank you. I do have one final question for you before we go. Would you come back and let's do this again in the future?
Oh, yes, please do invite me.
All right. We can pick right up where we left off, because there's so much we can talk about.
Yes, and thank you so much, David, for this opportunity. And thank you to your listeners.
Thank you. Thank you, Madonna. Well, my friends, I want to thank you for joining the Underground Podcast, the Underground Subway Podcast. Let me get it right, the Underground Subway Podcast. I want to give a special thank you to my guest, Madonna Hanna, who really inspired us and motivated us and lit a fire under us that we must do better with. If I could sum it up, we have to love one another, look beyond the color of our skin, because all of us have been in a situation where we felt inferior, and that's bullying. And so we're going to work harder. We're going to do more and more to make this world a better place. As long as we have special people like Madonna still hanging around and pushing us and motivating us, we're going to do it. Listen, we've got to go. I want to thank you again for joining the Underground Subway. Listen, before you go to bed tonight, I'm going to challenge you. I'm going to issue you a challenge. I want you to look yourself in the mirror before you go to bed. Look yourself eyeball to eyeball and ask yourself a question before you go to sleep tonight. Did I do something to make the world a better place today? Or did I just waste another day? Think about that. We don't have any time to waste. We need to get busy. I'll see you next time on the Underground Subway.